Welcome back, everybody, to These Aren't the Nerds You're Looking For. Lorenzo sitting here with
Kevin Howard.
How you going? How's it going, my man?
Going goods.
Oh, man. Tripping up all over the place. Tripped up on last week's episode. Tripping up now.
That's all
I don't
good,
know what
man.
it is. But we're going to be talking Clone Wars, A Friend in Need. This is Season 4, Episode 14 of the Clone Wars, the 84th episode as we have broken up the movie.
Yep.
84th story, as we've been calling it from now, every now and then.
Yeah.
This has a production code of 4.06 with an air date of January 13th, 2012. This one's actually directed by Dave Filoni and written by a Christian Taylor. Yeah.
Christian Taylor was not a name that I recognized, but I did recognize this Dave Filoni guy, and I think he's done...
Right.
How many has he done now? I don't know. A handful? Less than 10.
I did not keep count.
I'll put it that way.
I did not keep count. So if you got that number, spit it out.
I don't have a direct number, but I can tell you that the last time that we saw episodes that he directed were the last two episodes of Season 3, which would have been Padawan Lost and Wookiee Hunt.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Let's see. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is his 7th one. Found the spot. So this is his 7th episode directing out of 84.
And does that count...
Yeah.
Does that count the movie as 4, or does that count that as 1? Probably counts it as 1.
That is counting, let's see, Rising Malevolence, Cloak of Darkness, Lethal Trackdown, Clone Cadets, Padawan Lost, Wookiee Hunt, A Friend in Need. So, it's just the Malevolence bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So then there's also the 4 episodes of the theatrical release. So that would be 11.
So then that's counting separately. So,
yeah.
Anyways.
Cool.
Dave Filoni's back in the
Whoever
full
that guy
director's
is.
chair.
Yeah.
The fortune cookie is friendship shows us who we really are.
Now, I know that you nailed this one down, and you probably spent all week thinking about it.
No.
What
do you got?
I got a couple of different names here. R2-D2 and Miss Ahsoka Tano.
I don't know.
And we just
Actually,
have silence.
Yeah, I actually don't feel like it's right for either of those.
I couldn't really think of, like, anybody else that is going to be talking friendships. You know?
Jar Jar?
Maybe. And then I don't know.
But I agree with you. This is a weird one to pin down based on what we do with these fortune cookies.
The other character that I was thinking of was Wicket.
Okay. I would, yeah.
Based on the fact that he is he befriends Leia, and through their friendship, he kind of accepts her into their village. And then instead of the rest of our hero crew being eaten in that movie, her friendship with them defines, like a broader story of what's going on. And it's friendship that saves the day and keeps them from being dinner.
I guess. I don't know. It still doesn't feel right. Like, the only other moment where I could think where this applies, like a moment, but again, it doesn't apply to a particular character. Maybe like if we had to apply it to Leia as like another aside, she would have said to Han Solo right after he comes back and helps Luke destroy the Death Star, right? You know, when she's like, "I knew there was more to you than money. Friendship shows us who we really are."
That's good, and you saying that made me think about Lando.
It's just this one's gonna keep making the rounds, so I'll let you pick any of those names.
We're gonna put them all down.
All right.
Probably not.
So,
but yeah, we'll go from there.
Take your pick. The newsreel does set up a new arc, indeed. Again, though, the first sentence still kind of just the first sentence is divided by war. Like, okay, it's the Clone Wars. We got it. That's the most vague thing we can say at this point. But the setup we have is that there will be some sanctioned meeting between the Republic and the Separatists. And Mandalore was chosen as the neutral ground to hold these meetings. So we indeed cut to Mandalore, the throne room of Duchess Satine. There we have Padmé, Ahsoka, Bail Organa, and Mon Mothma sitting on one side. We have some Separatists that we've never seen before, as far as I can remember, on the other side.
I feel like maybe we've seen this brain guy before.
If we did, I'm personally going to admit that I have no memory of any of these people.
Yeah, fair enough.
There does not seem to be any sort of agreement at wherever we're jumping into this negotiations, I guess. It basically stems around there's a lead separatist that's kind of taken charge of the conversation, and she basically says that in order for peace to even begin, to foster, I guess, the Republic just needs to at least legitimize that the Separatist government exists in some form, right?
Yep.
The Separatists are just trying to form their own other government. You can have your Separatist systems and Republic systems, but the Republic must acknowledge that there is a Separatist government that is functioning for the planets that want to align there. Basically, nobody agrees to this. Padmé is kind of just sitting there, doesn't say too much, and then comes go ahead.
I was gonna say they just kind of go silent. Like we're introduced to these people, and the Separatist representative tells her piece, and then it's kind of like a collective and then the doors open and walks
Lux Bonteri. We have seen him before a while ago.
It was a
on the what was it like something on both sides or something, like Heroes on Both Sides, right?
Sides. Yep.
Heroes on Both Sides from forever ago. We mainly met his mother, but he made an appearance as well. And somebody does name drop him, so if forgotten, he is at least named aloud. As he comes in, there's like an aside. It's like, and some off-screen voice just goes, "What's Lux Bonteri doing here?
He wasn't invited." And then there's a bunch of murmurings and Lux and Bonteri, and
a lot of pearl clutching happening around the room, basically.
Yep.
We get another. I think it's kind of mentioned that he's a junior senator at this point. I think somebody on the Republic side is like, "Oh yeah, the junior senator Lux Bonteri is here." What? So again, he barges in to set up where all the players are at too. So we have 3 seats for Bail, Mon, and Padmé. Ahsoka's standing behind Padmé's chair, and then directly across from them are the 3 Separatists. And
it's
then
4 and 4, right?
Is it 4 and 4?
I thought it was
4
4
seats
and 4.
Because Padmé's or Ahsoka's not seated,
right?
So Correct. Who's the 4th?
I don't know.
Okay, so there are 3 seats with 3 seats on the other side.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
And then Satine is sitting on a throne high above, just kind of watching the proceedings.
Yes. It looks like the parties in this negotiation, shall we say, are sitting at a table that is no longer there. Mm-hmm. And it honestly, to me, looks like the table is like sunk into the floor, because in front of them, like where their chairs are is all level, but in between them is like a rectangle that is sunken down, like the opposite of the way that a table goes. And I feel like this could also be used as a dining hall, and that would just like, that area would just come up out of the floor, and then they would have a table in between them. It's kind of an awkward setup because Duchess Satine is like probably another like 20-25 feet away from them. Like if you were to walk through where the table would be with people on your left and your right and just continue going. You walk another 15 feet or whatever, you go up like 3 steps, and that's where her throne is. So Bonteri walks in between all of these people towards Satine, and then she kind of gives him a nod like, yeah, go ahead and talk. There's a podium there, and
there's 2 podiums, which is odd. Yeah.
So one for each
side. The podium
maybe?
Isn't centered. Yeah, the podium isn't centered. So basically the podium kind of, it doesn't flank Satine because they're on the same level as where everybody else is seated.
Okay.
But yeah, they basically form like they're a little bit in from the seats. They aren't aligned with the 2 rows of chairs.
Okay.
But yeah, I agree. It seems like the spot that if there were, for some reason, if there were more than 3 of them and they wanted a spot to like just put 2 speakers up there so that it doesn't become a sort of screaming match, that's where you put them. But Bonteri just chooses one of these seemingly at random. But then he goes up there and basically just levies a accusation that Count Dooku. Again, I'm just tripping. Count Dooku. Just tripping all over my words. Count Dooku murdered his mother.
Yeah, he does give...
That is the accusation thrown, yeah.
He does give a little introduction of himself, even though all these people know who he is, but I think it's more of like a formality. He walks up and he's like, yes, I am Lux Bonteri, son of Nina Bonteri, loyal separatist, patriot, and friend. And then there's like this eye ogling back and forth between him and Ahsoka. And then he's like, yeah, I'm here to just let you know that I discovered that Dooku murdered my mother in cold blood. The brain guy from the Separatists stands up and he's like, this is out of hand or whatever. These are lies. Escort this traitor out of here. And there's commando droids in the room. So they escort him out. There's some shouts back and forth where I was kind of unclear. Like the head separatist female, I couldn't tell if she was talking to Satine or Lux, because she's like, let us investigate this on our own. And then he's like, it doesn't matter if you do. Dooku's just going to stab you in the back like he did to my mother. Yada, yada, yada. You can't be trusted. Whatever.
This is a weird, like, little development. If this was a real negotiation, it derails the negotiation in a way that I don't think would happen in real life, right? Like, some third party enters, and then somehow the guards from one side of the negotiation gets to decide what happens to this individual. Like, shouldn't it be the Mandalorians that take Lux into custody?
No, I don't think so, because he is a separatist.
Okay, that makes sense.
So,
I'll go with that. That makes sense. But I'm just saying, like, in terms of disrupting this negotiation at all, right? It's a weird little moment that happens. It's a sideways discussion for the negotiation themselves. Like, let's say you and I are in discussion where we're like we're agreeing to purchase land from one another, right? Like, you're selling land, I'm going to buy it. Somebody comes in and just goes, yo, by the way, this other dude murdered my mother. And we're just like, okay. And then for some reason, like, you have your dude, like, escort the guy out, you know? Like,
yeah, but
don't we just call the cops?
You would have to see it like this. Like, say we had a co-family reunion. And it's the Lorenzos and it's the Kevins, right? And then your cousin comes in and is like, hey, by the way, my grandpa just took a dump in the trash can. And then somebody from your family would be like, nah, get out of here. Like, you're disrupting things, and hauls them off.
Sure,
that's the way that I see things.
I'll buy that. Okay, that makes sense. So, moving forward, Lux gets taken out of there, as you mentioned. Padmé sends Ahsoka to go after Lux because they basically understand that he's just going to get killed immediately. They just know that.
Discreetly. Subtly. Something like that.
Yeah. So Ahsoka gets out of there. We see Lux being taken to a ship. Then he gets holocalled by Count Dooku.
Yep.
Who denies any
Dooku
involvement.
Skype.
Yep, more Dooku holocalling. But Lux then activates a recorder on his wrist or something like that, and then tries to get Dooku to mention that, to admit basically as an aside, try and catch him. But at most, he doesn't get that. He just gets that that Dooku will kill Lux at most. I still feel like that's maybe bad to have on tape, but we don't get the full assassination of Mina.
So is it a recorder though? Because
I couldn't tell. I'm not gonna lie.
Later in the episode, it's revealed to not be a recorder. It's revealed to be something different. Right. But it's hard to tell because it looks similar to a wrist comm thing, and he hits a button,
right,
and there's these green bars that are lighting up. Dooku has some really, really clever, I won't call it wordplay, but just kind of verbal gymnastics in this episode that is kind of lovely, because Lux is you know what you did, and Dooku's oh, do I? I've done a lot of things. He's I'm an old man, I've yada yada yada, and he's you killed my mom, and Dooku's I've killed a lot of people, so forgive me if me killing your mother escapes my memory. Apparently it wasn't memorable.
Right.
And then the end of this conversation is closed out by Dooku saying, I think it's time to reintroduce him to his mother, and then tells the commando droids, kill him. Ahsoka burst in the door. The Skype call's gone at this point, so he wasn't even going to be bothered to make sure that the droids did what they were supposed to do. And commando droids have traditionally been super badass. There's 4 droid deaths in this episode, and they all happen in 30 seconds, and they're all by Ahsoka.
Right.
She kicks a door in. Yep. She does a force push, takes these 2 out. She's Bonteri, come with me. They run down the hall. They open it up. She makes a call to R2, start the ship, get it going, come pick us up, whatever. She goes through another door and takes out 2 more commandos, right? And then they literally run past 4 other commando droids that just had their backs to them. I was thinking, at first I was real hung up on okay, how'd she get past all these commandos to get in there to begin with? But I think they just I think what they did is when they went out the first door, they went through the transporter elevator deal, the lift, right? And they just, they went down to the landing platform or whatever. So these droids had their back to the lift, but it wasn't Ahsoka snuck past them to get in the first time. She came in a different way, and they're going out this direction.
Right.
But these commando droids didn't even flinch when 2 of their kind get taken out. They didn't even turn around. No reaction at all. And even when Bonteri and Tano run past them, then they're
what's happening?
Yeah.
Who are you?
It might as well have been
it's a weird delayed response.
Hey, who are those
agree.
people?
Yeah, it's a weird delayed response, especially for being commando droids. I don't disagree that they seem nerfed in this episode for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. They didn't need to be commando droids based on what happens here.
I feel like they shouldn't have been.
No, not at all. They escape pretty easily. They get on another ship. They get out of there, as you mentioned. While they're trying to get out of there, then Lux pulls a gun on Ahsoka.
Well, first we have the Skype call from Anakin. And he's he says, Padmé just talked to me, and she said that negotiations are pretty much failing. How's it going with you? And Ahsoka's I got Lux. We're on the way to Coruscant.
Take him in, and he'll have amnesty.
Yeah.
And, he'll at least have amnesty, and then that end conversation ends. That hangs up. Then the gun gets pulled. Is this the first time we've heard the word gun?
I thought the same thing. Like not blaster, gun.
But gun or even pistol. Like Ahsoka literally calls it out. It's like, why do you have a gun? That was a interesting little moment to me. But Lux's reasoning is that even though he doesn't want to be part of the Separatists, he doesn't want to join the Republic either. He's going to make his own way, basically, and he has contacted a quote-unquote group on a planet called Karlak. That's the first mention of a planet called Karlak that we've ever heard.
And these people are noble and will help him out because they have the same agenda.
Yeah, they all want to mess up Dooku. None of them likes Dooku. Mm-hmm. So, Lux electrocutes Ahsoka, and then she passes out.
And then conveniently R2
takes over the
rolls
ship
back in.
Yeah, and Lux is like, "Oh, she's just tired. That's all. I got this. Don't worry.
Sleep it off."
Yeah. After all that, she's just tired. So then Ahsoka awakes inside of the ship. They're on Karlak. It's a snowy planet. We can just see outside of the ship from the cockpit. Her lightsabers are gone, and so R2 is still there, kind of like poking at Ahsoka, sort of. And Ahsoka tasks R2 with trying to find her lightsabers. And then she sees Lux hanging outside, and then heads out there to join him. She says, happens to have a coat.
She says, I'm going to go talk to Mr. Bonteri. So we got Gun, we got Mr. And I got a question for you before we get to the sweet-ass coat that Ahsoka is wearing. Don't you think that R2 would have, stayed by her side this entire time that she was unconscious? I feel like R2
I was
would
curious
have been
about
holding
that too.
a vigil, but then when she wakes up, her lightsabers are gone. And I feel like when Lux takes her lightsabers, R2 probably would have followed him or fucking zapped him or got some appendages out and tried to fight him or something, you know? This is R2's personality.
I agree.
In my opinion.
No, I completely agree with that assessment. I had that thought as well regarding where R2 was for that one moment where he would have taken the lightsabers, because I was curious about that as well.
No, I guess Lux could have sent him off to do some type of task involving landing preparation or something, and done it at that point. But that also feels a little bit forward thinking for Lux at this point, because he's pretty much laser focused on this is what I'm doing. So I'm also, the way I'm seeing this is that after they land, he goes to leave and he's like, well, can't leave her with her lightsabers, just gonna take these now.
Right.
And not ooh, I need to trick R2 to get him away so I can do this in secret and so on.
Yeah. It's an interesting little point, and I don't disagree with you there. But then Ahsoka heads outside without her lightsabers still, while R2 is trying to find them. She has this coat, which is convenient, I guess.
It's a super convenient.
Do they always have these coats?
And it's super awesome because being
it's a cool jacket.
Togruta, she has montrails, so she's got these horns growing out of the top of her head, and this thing is leather on the outside, fur on the inside, and tailored not only to her body type and size, but also the hood is tailored to the tips of her montrails.
Right.
It's pretty nice.
It has the space for them. It looks cool. It's aesthetically really cool. It's just one of those weird things where, has that jacket just always been hanging out?
Yeah.
Waiting for her to just slip it on at some point?
I don't think so, because this seems not like a ship that they have used a whole bunch.
Right. But at no point did anybody plan on going to Karlak, right?
Right.
Except for Lux. So this jacket just appears. So, cool. First appearance of a wintry jacket for Ahsoka. But
This is also the only
Lux
appearance
is hanging
of
out.
this ship. It is the Phoenix. It's a GX-1 short hauler. It's 37.28 meters long. And it says roles are senatorial transport. So this could be the ship that she took to get there, which means, I guess, that Bail and Padmé and Mon Mothma are just stuck because she took the limo home.
Right.
And affiliation is just Galactic Republic. So this isn't like something that Ahsoka would frequent on. So it is curious why she has a coat that is well tailored to her in general, but it looks really nice.
Right. So we get her joining Lux again. No lightsabers. Then Lux is like, "What are you doing here? You shouldn't be out here." And then as soon as she kind of joins in, we get the Death Watch showing up.
Yeah,
Death Watch, the group of Mandalorians, the terrorist group basically that we first saw in the previous Mandalorian trilogy of episodes.
Yep.
So Mandalore Plot, Voyage of Temptation, Duchess of Mandalore. Way back when. What was that, season 2, I think? So they show up, and then we get a leader talking. She is not named as far as I recall, but she is Bo-Katan Kryze? So,
yeah.
Something like that. Real quickly, voiced by Katie Sackhoff, which is very cool because she was on Battlestar Galactica. So, so she shows up. She asks who Ahsoka is. Ahsoka makes up a story that she's Lux's betrothed.
Yeah, because they totally get caught off guard. This female,
like, mid-conversation
Mandalorian, which is like the only female Mandalorian that we see other than, like, as far as Death Watch goes, right? And she's like, "Lux, who is this?" And they're both like, And Ahsoka's like, "I'm his betrothed."
Yes. Yep.
She's like, "Okay."
So then, despite explaining any of that, they're all like, "Well, just take her along." And then R2 rolls out holding the 2 lightsabers, and Ahsoka's like, "No, not now, not now." So then he hides them away before anybody sees that he's holding them.
Does he have them out when he rolls down the ramp?
Yeah, he's holding them out. They're both
totally
like in his 2 metal arms. Oh,
That's
yeah.
hilarious.
And then she's like, she just gives like a full like, "Nope, don't, nope." And then he's like, "Oh, okay." And they like retract into his body, and nobody sees except for Ahsoka. So though they are both taken along with Lux by the Death Watch to go meet their leader. So they get to the base of where all of the Death Watch are, and there's like a bizarre setup where we just see a bunch of various Mandalorians shooting and killing and destroying a bunch of droids, and it seems like functionally pointless, honestly.
It's weird.
Yeah, and
There's
we even get one droid,
like that Wild West thing of like dance droid and like shooting at the ground.
Right. But one gets like straight up murdered, and while the droid is getting murdered, it goes down and is like, "Why? Oh, why? Why?" And I had the same fucking question, honestly. Why does this scene exist? Why? With hindsight, I know again where it's going. All the same, I don't understand why this scene exists. It's so weird. It sets up the Mandalorian Death Watch to I don't understand what we're trying to explain about these characters.
I think I know what you're trying to get at, and I don't feel that if that is the truth, it's executed well.
No, like
I think
it doesn't set up like the culture of the the Death Watch.
I think
I don't understand what it's trying to set up here.
One thing that I think it's trying to do is show that they're just a-holes, right?
Okay.
And you know they're shooting droids for entertainment. This is the same as like when you see, I don't know, I can't think of a movie specifically, but, like some dudes go to like a bad place and there's like extraneous people there eating barbecue and some guy's going to pull a gun out and be like shooting squirrels in a tree just to show that he's an asshole. Like,
right.
I
So
think
it's
that's
like
what
in a
this
typical
is.
in a typical like 90s gang movie, this would be the scene where you roll up through South Central LA and then you see a bunch of dude in certain colored bandanas or whatever, certain colored clothing, and it's like we're setting up that we've entered gang territory. Now, here's where I have a problem with it existing in this story. Lux, throughout this and moving forward a little bit, Lux thinks that Death Watch are on his side and will help him.
Yep.
But that goes contrary to what we just saw. Like, anybody could look around in that scene and be like, oh, right, bad guys. These are the bad guys. We're setting this all up. These are the bad guys. It's like that BBC sketch from, I forgot the show, but it like, there's the two guys that are in the trenches of World War II, and one of the Nazis turns to the other Nazis and goes, hey, do you ever think, are we the bad guys?
Maybe we're the bad guys. Yeah.
Right. But Lux is bumbling through this going like, no. So Lux and Ahsoka, back to where the story heads, they get put in their own little tent at first, and Ahsoka is like, why are you dealing with Death Watch? Number one, their name is Death Watch. And number two, they're Death Watch. What is wrong with you? And Lux is just like, oh, they're going to help me because we have the same goal. They're going to help me kill Dooku.
He does explain the rest of his plan at this point, and that's he shows her like the wristcom thing that you had talked about being a recording device, and he says that it's a hololocator, so it's like tracing a phone call, essentially.
Right.
So he says, I knew that if I called out Dooku publicly, that I would be put before him, and then I would be able to find out where he is. I'm going to give that information to these people. They're going to be able to kill Dooku. And she's like, you're an idiot. It's not going to work.
Right. So he's betting on the enemy of my enemy is also my friend deal here. But, like, there are certain limits to that. Like, when you're rolling into a literal camp of death for droids, like, dude, come on. So Lux's characterization up to this point is not something that I'm down for. But mid conversation here, we get Death Watch re-entering the tent, and the leader of the whole Death Watch happens to be there, and it's Pre Vizsla.
Yes.
So we get Jon Favreau back.
Yeah. Pre Vizsla like interrupts their conversation. Ahsoka is mid saying something that I guess Lux doesn't think that the Death Watch needs to hear, because he cuts her off by like kissing her.
Yeah. Because, that's the way to do it.
I mean, I guess it's an effective way to keep her from speaking more. And they have had a relationship in the past that went beyond friendship. I think it went. Yeah. I think it went beyond friendship, and it never made it too romantic. It's like that weird part in between.
Yeah. Sure, I'll give you that.
So, yes, it was. I'm not going to justify it as being welcome, but I think that if circumstances were a little bit different, I think that Ahsoka would not have. I think she would have welcomed it in different circumstances. I'll just put it that way.
Sure.
But it was definitely, as you said, non-consensual. We get
a interesting little moment where Pre Vizsla is like, well, who's this? It's like, oh, women, am I right? So then essentially Ahsoka is just kicked out of the tent.
Am I interrupting
That's basically
something?
what I'm going to just...
No.
Right. I'm just going to boil the conversation down to that, because there's that's all we get. So Death Watch also realizes that R2 is with them, and there's this weird little moment where they task R2 to fix the other droids that they literally just shot up, which
that's the second part of why that scene was included, so that that way you don't question why are all these droids here, which I think is what you were just going to ask, that or why do they have R2 doing it. But R2 is an astromech droid, which means that he is a mechanic and really good at reading star charts. That's the two things that astromech droids do. So they want him to put the droids back together so they can torture them and shoot them and kill them again.
Yeah, no, that's just... No, that still doesn't justify that first scene enough to me.
I totally agree. I think if they just skip the first scene
weird.
and they just have... They're like, hey, we got a mechanic droid. Like, have him repair all the fucking busted-ass droids and we can use them later. That would...
Right. I agree. That would have been fine.
Yeah.
Look, again, back to that first scene. It's like they're trying to set up Death Watch as bad. That justification for that scene, I think, is fine until it falls apart with Lux ignoring what he just saw and then immediately having R2 undo that scene. Like, the end result of that scene, shall we say. I think that scene establishing Death Watch as being the bad guy still works on its own. But then on the other side, Lux ignoring that and then just, oh, even though we broke these droids, we're going to have you fix them. Like, oh, okay.
I mean, it's kind of like a sew the heads back on the chicken so we can shoot the heads back off. That's what's going on here.
All right. Yeah. It's weird. It's a weird task to put in the middle of this episode, but it happens. And then we cut over to Ahsoka with the other females, I guess, who, again, more slaves show up. We've had a lot of slaves in the last handful of episodes after finishing a 3-episode arc of slaves. It was kind of... I did not expect to see slaves again so soon.
Yeah, at first I was like, are these slaves or is Death Watch just misogynistic? And then I remembered that there is like the one female Death Watch member that we see, and then later
Bo-Katan.
It's pretty much just confirmed that Death Watch came into this town and was like, fuck you people, we're taking your town and you now serve us.
Yeah, and they specifically took the women as slaves. They don't mention anything else beyond that, but all the same, that's pretty dark that they took only the women.
Yeah, the implications are not something I want to think about.
Right. None of the female slaves seem traumatized to that point. They definitely just seem sad that they have lost their freedom.
Yep.
We get another weird explanation where one of the slaves that Ahsoka talks to is like, we were too trusting and we just believed these people and now we're slaves. So that's how it happens.
This slave's name is Tryla, and she's later revealed to be the granddaughter of the chieftain of the tribe. So I guess that's just the introduction, like the setup of who this person is and why they're relevant later. Right. It took me watching this twice to figure that out, because at first I was like, okay, whatever, and then like later there's a scene where there's a chieftain and his granddaughter is brought out, and I didn't even make the connection until like I went through this next time, right? It could have been two different people as far as I was concerned. Did you want to touch on...
It could have been anybody.
Did you want to touch on the conversation that Lux and Pre Vizsla had after Ahsoka left the tent? So there was like a little conversation where Lux is basically like questioning his loyalty to Lux, and Vizsla's like, these are not questions that you ask of me. And then he gives him like this speech, and he's like, you see this scar? This scar was given to me by Dooku, and if you don't trust me, I'm going to leave you with the same type of scar that I have. And Lux is like, okay, sounds legit. Like, here you go, and hands over his little device, and he's like, this is, you'll find the location of Dooku. And then Pre Vizsla's like, great, let's celebrate. We'll feast. Then we go over to Ahsoka, and she's talking to this unfortunate girl. There's another Death Watch member that comes in at the conclusion of Ahsoka's conversation and is like, all right, we eat, so why don't you get your asses in gear and make us some food?
Yeah.
And then
it's literally like a go get me a sandwich woman situation.
Yes, indeed. And not just him, but get sandwiches for everyone. So we cut over to the feast/celebration, which looks very boring. It's kind of a bunch of different...
Yeah, they're just sitting there.
It's a bunch of separate picnic tables. There's no music. There's no, like, celebratory
it's like
speeches
the saddest...
or anything.
Yeah. It's definitely like a sad middle school, like, dance, but somebody forgot the music.
Right. And the dancing?
So, all the kids are awkwardly like sitting around because cooties or something. Like
there's not even like a punch bowl or snacks or anything.
Right. But Ahsoka's like serving drinks or something, or soup or bowls of something. I don't know.
It could be bags of air. Who knows? Melted
non-specific.
snow.
Yeah.
Vizsla and Lux are seated together, and I'm totally on board with what you've been talking about. With Lux is just a complete naive idiot this entire time, because all of these things are happening that should be showing him that Death Watch is not good people, and
like slaves,
right?
You know, like he's being served by slaves, which already for him to not even show any sort of concern. Just is awkward. Like I personally don't mind the misogynistic features of this episode because it applies to the Death Watch.
Right.
An episode or like shows having racist or sexist characters doesn't make the show itself sexist or racist, right?
I totally agree with you. Like this is they're making a point in this. This isn't what it is.
Right. But the fact that Lux has no opposition to this is where I have a problem, right? Mm-hmm. If Ahsoka and Lux are kind of our two lead-in characters here, Lux is super annoying to me.
I don't remember his character being like this last time. I remember him being like idealistic and he and Ahsoka had differing opinions on the Clone Wars because they're on different sides, right? And the things that he was bringing up at the time were like a respect and a pride for his people and a logical approach to the reason that we have our beliefs on this side is X. And they were at least able to relate to each other. Now he's like, you can't even say that he's like laser focused on like killing Dooku because he's already done his part. Like, hey, here's the deal. Like, can't I just come here and hand over the info and leave? Like, he doesn't need to be a part of it after providing the information. And in a world that has hyperspace travel but no data transfer, you can Skype with someone millions of light years away in instantaneous communication, but you have to take a data storage device in the physical form and hand it to somebody.
Yeah.
He has no reason to be involved in this situation past the
it's silly,
data transfer.
Right. And from his viewpoint too, it's like the fact that he's in league with the Death Watch at any point. I
They
agree with you.
fucking call themselves Death Watch. They don't call themselves like rainbow happy people, you know?
Right. And by him supporting them in any fashion makes him a sympathizer for their misogynistic behavior and for their disregard for robot feelings and lives and rights per se, right? I know we're a long way from the events of Solo, where the uprising of the robots on Kessel happened, but like all the same, I agree with you. It's his characterization took like 30 steps back for no reason.
And it doesn't get any better because the next thing that happens in this episode is that the feast, and I just used air quotes because it's not even really a feast, is interrupted by the chieftain of the clan of people of this place, the natives, right? The chieftain comes in, interrupts the meal, addresses Pre-Vizsla. Vizsla's like, "Oh, chieftain so-and-so, what are you doing here?" And the guy's like, we decided that we don't like what's going on, and you didn't ask us if you could do all this, and we want you to leave. And Pre-Vizsla's like, "Oh, well, if that's what you want, then that's what we'll do," and kind of snickers. And the guy's like, really? Like, that was easy? Like, so you'll give us our people back too? And he was like, "Oh, absolutely. Tomorrow morning, I promise." And fucking Lux like leans over and basically elbow jabs Ahsoka and was like, "See, they're not so bad."
Right. Yeah. It's stupid. I agree. Like that moment from Lux as well is super stupid. Minor detail that affects nothing in the rest of this episode, but the chieftain is named. I only point that out because names are very rare on this show, but it's Piter, which is interesting. It's Pieter, but as Pre-Vizsla pronounces it, hey, Piter, Chieftain Piter, shows up. So
do you think it was just like Chieftain Peter and Favreau flubbed the line?
Probably. It's likely. It's possible. But I noticed that as well. So the next morning, we basically cut immediately to the next morning.
Yep.
Chieftain Piter is hanging out, I guess, in front of his village. The Death Watch do, in fact, show up with the women, and they give Tryla over to Piter, but then immediately Pre-Viz pulls out the Darksaber and kills Tryla right in front of Piter.
Yeah, he's like, "Hey, here's your granddaughter, just like I said I was gonna do. I'm returning her. Aren't I great?"
Yeah, and then stab.
Yeah, stabbed her in the back, and she's dead. And Lux is right there with him, right?
Lux is standing, right behind Pre-Viz. Then Pre-Viz basically tells the rest of the Mandalorians to just burn the place to the ground.
He says, "Kill them all," because as Vizsla is talking to the chieftain, because it looks like it's just like a small collective, like a couple of people in this exchange, and Vizsla is talking to the chieftain, and then from like above camera view, or the camera pans up or something, or zooms out or whatever, and we see like dozens of fucking Mandalorians with their jetpacks going, like hovering around this town. So they start burning it. Ahsoka runs over
with like
to
their wrist fire gauntlet things.
Yep. Ahsoka runs over to the granddaughter, and the granddaughter's like, "Oh, we were dumb. Like, save my people, Ahsoka, save my people." And you can tell
that's pretty much literally what she says, yeah.
Yeah, you can tell that Ahsoka has like an inner struggle going on, because if she is to help these people, she's going to reveal herself as a Jedi and thus put not only herself in danger, but also Lux. And despite how Lux's decisions have been terrible and he has been blind to everything that's going on around him, I think that she still has feelings for him as far as friendship goes. I'm not saying romantic. I'm saying she cares about this guy on a friendship level, right? She does not wish him harm just because he is being ignorant to the world around him currently. But there's a Death Watch member that sets her over the edge, and everybody's screaming and there's buildings burning, and he's like cackling and like turns and like lights something else on fire, and she jumps up, gets a fucking spear or something from somewhere, chucks it, hits him, takes out two other I want to call them like Death Troopers, but that's not what they are. They're just like Death Watch members, right?
The Mandalorians.
Mandalorians. Yeah. But the Mandalorians are the people of the planet. These people are separate. They're the Death Watch.
Yeah. The Death Watch members, yeah.
Anyway, Vizsla like hops at her with the Darksaber and cuts her bow staff in half or whatever. She is subdued. It takes 3 Death Watch members from different angles with their wrist gauntlet grappling hook cable things to subdue her. There's a speech by Vizsla, whatever. They end up dragging her back through the snow. Like, he's like, drag her back to camp. We cut over to R2, and R2 has fixed all the droids, and one of the droids is like, oh, thank you, what can we do to repay you? He sees Ahsoka being drug up in the snow. She would be hella cold because at this point, her coat is gone.
Right.
Her
She's just
outfit
in that weird dress
is
thing.
less revealing than it was when she was more of a child, but it's also not 100% covering her body.
No.
R2 tells these droids, save my friends. And then I think what happens after that is that they're back inside somewhere. She's all roped up. Vizsla is talking to Lux and interrogating him, and he's like, you had the balls to fucking question my loyalty to you, and you brought a Jedi into my camp. And Lux is like, well, I didn't mean to, and I didn't think you were going to find out because I'm dumb. And at that point, Vizsla's like, okay, well, I'm just going to kill the both of you then. And then R2 rolls in and just like bumps into one of these Death Troopers.
Yep.
And then he literally just blows smoke up everybody's butts and sticks out all of his appendages and whips around in a circle. And this is enough to distract everybody. Lux pushes Vizsla. R2 drops Ahsoka's lightsabers in her hand, and she has the time to say, like, thank you, buddy, or something. And then does this awesome escaping from the cables and jumping into the air in a force whoosh, and does a quadruple decapitation of these guys. Which is one of the coolest fucking things I've seen in a long time.
Yeah. For sure, yeah. She takes out all 4 of them at once. The fight continues. Let's see. And then the fight doesn't last too long. Ahsoka and Lux and R2 get in a speeder. Then Ahsoka, while still fighting, gets out last. And they all drive away. There's a little chase that happens, so Bo-Katan
totally
and 2 other...
downplaying this fight that's going on because there is a big-ass fucking melee with... They go from inside the tent to outside, and all the droids are there, and Lux is like, looks like R2 made some friends, and then there's just this balls-to-the-wall battle of everyone fighting everyone, except for Lux and R2, because they're getting the escape vehicle.
They're getting a speeder, yeah.
Ahsoka has some badass force skills going on here, and this is pretty intense and pretty awesome, and it does last for a little bit. She does escape. They go on the run. They get some rocket Mandalorian Death Watch people after them. The only one that presents a challenge is what's her name? The female?
Bo-Katan.
Bo-Katan, right? And
yeah,
she
the leader, the other leader, basically. The secondary head of the Death Watch, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she hops on, she knocks the lightsabers out of Ahsoka's hands. They fall into the speeder. Lux finally does something and like twists the speeder a little bit, so then Bo-Katan gets distracted. Ahsoka hops back up, kicks Bo-Katan over the front hood of the speeder, who then gets sort of run over, but because it's a hovercraft, she sort of just tries to stab the bottom of the speeder, but they get away all the same.
Yep.
So Bo-Katan's still floating out there somewhere in the cold region of Karlak. And so let's see. Ahsoka, R2, and Lux get back on the ship. And Ahsoka starts driving the ship back to Coruscant. But then Lux disappears again. And
he just doesn't. It's like he doesn't follow them into the cockpit, because the way that it's set up is like it looks like they're talking and they walk up the ramp, and then you cut to the interior of the ship and you see Ahsoka and R2 walking into the cockpit, and Ahsoka's talking to R2, and then she's like, fire up the converters and the engines and do the thing to make the takeoff and whatever, and R2's like beepity beep beep, and she goes, what do you mean the escape pod's been activated? And then she's like, oh, Lux. Like, come on, you didn't even have to think about that twice. Like,
right, who else is on this ship? Like,
right.
You're talking to one of two people or two things, sentient things on this goddamn ship. Everybody took stupid pills in this episode, I'm convinced. So we get this moment where she goes up to the escape pod and she tries to convince Lux to stay for some stupid reason. But they're like, we'll meet again. But they're like, we'll meet again. They both put their hand on the glass, and then the pod launches off, and Ahsoka's just like left behind because, I don't know, she's like the 16-year-old spinster of the whole series, I guess.
It's very dramatic. It's very teenage, coming of age relationship dramatic.
Yeah. So he floats away, and their ship is left without an escape pod in case something else happens, because Lux is a runaway bastard.
Now this tells me, I've seen escape pods in the past. And although we have had a couple that were able to have some sort of steerability, right? They're not long-range craft. So
no.
The only thing that he can be doing right now is going back down to the planet, which would be really, really bad for him.
Yeah, I was curious about this too, because it'd be one thing if the ship had a jump ship, you know? Like, I would be down for that.
Right.
That's a thing. But, like, yeah, the escape pod? Like,
right.
I agree. It's a weird little point. He's going back down to the planet, or he's just, like, floating, and he's going to send out a beacon or something.
I guess that's possible.
Yeah, either way, it's just, yeah, like, Ahsoka's sad for some reason, even though Lux is fucking dumb, and girl, you can do better. It's just weird. This is a weird relationship. I don't like it. So we get a exterior of the ship. Ahsoka's looking out, hand still on the glass. Cue loud music. Iris in.
Dunzo. Another one bites the dust.
Yep. This episode's done for. What'd you think of this episode, sir?
Before I get to that, can we go back and talk about the fortune cookie here? Friendship shows us who we really are. Shouldn't it be plural, like friendships, or Or is it like literally a friendship, like our friendship shows you and me who we are, and it's like a singular thing? It's like narrowed down into a single relationship as opposed to like... Because when I first thought about it, I'm like, okay, this says the people that we choose as friends, like, show us who we really are. But then as we talk through this thing over the past hour... It seems like ultra singular, so that it's like boiled down to just Ahsoka and Lux.
I get what you're saying, but no, I get what you're saying, but I don't think so. Like, I think you're just thinking too much about that. Like,
I'm sure.
To me, I think it's like it's from a first-person singular perspective, right? So. Yes, there are multiple friendships, but it's just like the act of friendship entirely.
Okay.
Right?
Fair enough.
It's the act of friendship as a concept, not individual relationships.
Okay.
Being pluralized.
Well, then I will move past that, and I will tell you that I like this episode. It's pretty quick. There's some silly stuff that happens, but man, Ahsoka has grown in the Force a lot. I feel like she is less Snips, and she is more developing into... She is Ahsoka Tano, Jedi, unfortunately, apprentice, right? She's still a Padawan, but she's just as good as a lot of fucking Jedi Knights that we've seen, and she is showing restraint. She is showing that she is able to do the thing that needs to be done, not because it's easy, but because it's right. And her Force abilities are shining through, and she can do some badass shit. If only for that, I would give this one a thumbs up. And I do like the R2 coming to the rescue of like the misfit toys and Toy Story moment in this thing, even if it doesn't 100% make sense. Like, it's fun that R2 is able to save the day in a different way, and it's his idea as opposed to just kind of like circumstance. Because like he did the thing to fix the droids, and they're like, "Oh, we feel indebted to you." I don't know why. There's a point in this episode where the one's like, "I used to be a battle droid. Fix me, please." And then like afterwards they're like, "Thank you. We're just going to get shot again." Really, they should have been like, "Kill me."
Right. Just put me out of my misery, please.
But either way, like R2 does this thing separate and then sees how he can use that to the advantage of his friends. And I think that's awesome too. So overall, I give this one a thumbs up. I liked it. I would go back and watch this again.
All right. Cool.
What you got?
I agree with you on certain points. I do think Ahsoka is pretty cool in this episode. There are parts I do like in this episode. I do like Previs. I really like him as a character.
Yeah, it was fun to have him back.
Yeah, I like him. I like the Darksaber. The look of the Darksaber is really cool. It's a cool piece of lore that builds from here on out, especially. But even if without that, I just think it's a cool, aesthetically looking piece of tech and weaponry that we have that is very different versus everything else that we've seen here. Interesting introduction of the gun to the galaxy. But I'm not gonna lie, in the end I'm giving this a thumbs down. Like, man. There's a lot I do like here. There's a lot I do like. But the pieces of how it all fits together. For you, I think you said it went by breezily, but I felt like this went on for way too long. There are way too many stages to this story.
Okay.
The fact that we started out on Mandalore, then we get like that discussion with Dooku. I'm just gonna basically sum up the entire episode again, but it's just like there are so many little steps that happen in this episode. There are a lot of little developments, right?
I can see that.
Fine. It's fine under most circumstances, but there's so many like just little moments that I felt like we could have taken a bigger step, right? This whole prologue of Lux making this announcement is just a lot. It's a lot of a lot.
Do you feel like it would have been better if they could have like taken the first third of this and kind of developed that story further, and then had like the
like break this up into 2 episodes?
Yeah. Do you think that would have been helpful?
Maybe.
Or do you think that it would just be plagued with the same problems and that it would just feel stretched and we would have been like, cram this shit together?
Honestly, like that whole part on Mandalore, I did not give 2 shits about. Like, if the main story is this whole thing on Karlak, this little bit on Mandalore, I don't care about. Like, Bail and Mon Mothma literally say nothing, right?
Right.
We get 3 unnamed Separatists. One is named off of Wikipedia, but I barely know any of these characters. Right. You seem to think that we've met one of them before. I have no memory of these people. In my head right now, can vaguely remember Brainy. So it would have just been like separate story that ends up on Karlak, and yet, like, unless there's 3 acts that we can figure out here for that first bit, no, like, I don't think that would have helped at all.
Right.
My chief complaint with this episode, for sure, and it's the thing that holds me back, is that there is no way to be empathetic with Lux, who is, I would put, besides Ahsoka, as the like co-protagonist of this episode.
Right.
If we're supposed to kind of experience things through his eyes, like, I'm not saying like main characters need to be perfect. That's why we have a word like protagonist and not like hero or whatever applied to every lead character, right? Because sometimes you can have like American History X, right? Like,
right.
But Lux sits in this weird other zone too, where at least, like, if we're gonna use American History X as the example, yes, the first half of American History X glorifies neo-Nazism and it's bad, but then, you know, the movie goes on and then Edward Norton gets butt raped in prison and then changes his mind about neo-Nazism. But we end up with Lux, who seems to have learned nothing by the end of this. Like, he doesn't, we don't get a moment of him just going, oh, like, I've made a huge, like Arrested Development, like, I've made a huge mistake, right? But the entire time, he's like, oh, I'm making a deal with a group called Death Watch. They are known terrorists from Mandalore. So we're going to go there. And then when I show up, because I know they're terrorists, so I'm not concerned about them shooting these droids. That's fine. Slaves. Okay. And then, but burn down a village. That is too far, good sir. Too far.
And you know why? It's too far because Pre Vizsla lied about it. Because Pre Vizsla said, "Oh, I'm sorry, you didn't want us to come in. You didn't want us to come into your town and fucking take over and kill all your droids and take your women to make us sandwiches. Oh, my bad. Okay, well, you're right then. Like, sorry, I guess we should have asked, but since now you're telling us that you don't like that, we're gonna leave and we're gonna just let everything be the way that it was. You can have your people back." And Lux is like, "See, like, he's nice. Like, the guy asked him, he's gonna do it, and then he doesn't, and that's what pisses him off."
But you're making it even worse. So it's not the cold murder per se. It's the lying of it, right?
Yep.
Like,
it's just the line.
So
it's the deceit.
That's the weird thing. That's the thing about this episode that I can't. That's the main thing of this episode that I cannot get behind, is just supporting Lux in any sort of way. Lux just annoyed the shit out of me the whole time. I'm not gonna lie, like he's like close to Jar Jar level annoying to me in this episode. Cause it's just like this weird morality thing that's happening where, like we discussed on the heroes on both sides, like he's trying to present his own viewpoint to things, but here he's just like, what, terrorists? That's fine. These are just mass murderers. That's, hey, you know. Like,
he's definitely overly naive.
Yeah. Like, the ends justify the means, guys. All's well that ends well. Right? And then he literally gets served by slaves and, like, thinks nothing of it. Yeah, like... There are... I agree.
Wants to be his girlfriend.
Right. Like, there... I agree with you. This has definitely, up to this point, some of the best Ahsoka moments. I completely agree with you, and I want to support all of that. Everything else about this episode bogs it down so poorly. So poorly. And the fact that her badassery comes out, too, with, like, based on characters that we do not care about. I really wish the show would start introducing more characters, have them around for a while, then kill them, instead of like these nameless, faceless villagers interchangeable with anybody. Like, I feel like we're watching straight up like any 80s movies based on the Vietnam War, where like it's always like these cool white people coming into Vietnam, and then you just spend the whole 2.5 hours watching a shit ton of Vietnamese people die, but then like one white guy dies at the end, and that's your emotional throughput, you know? Like,
yeah.
So
I'm not a big fan of Walker Texas Ranger, I take it.
yeah. But so it's this it's this weird trope of the show where we always get like these random villagers to die and that's supposed to take place of like the big emotional point. And I already know by the time we record for the next episode, I'm gonna forget that these villagers exist. Just straight up. I'm calling it right now.
Fair enough.
I have no emotional attachment to any of these people. The fact that this is what sets Ahsoka off is fine, but I also just don't feel it because I don't care. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's badass, but I just don't have any emotional connection to her badassery here. Just because I don't care about why it's happening. You know, like,
okay.
For me, it was just the 4 times decapitation. That was cool.
Man,
but
that was so cool.
Then I just didn't care about the rest of the battle because the whole justification of it. It's whatever. I don't care. Like, it's not the worst episode of the show. I just sat not caring the whole time. So. Because Lux was just so goddamn annoying to me.
Well, there you have it, people. Lorenzo does not care about a story about misogyny, and a couple weeks ago he said the best part of that episode was the slaves. So I don't know. I don't even think I know who you are anymore.
It's weird. This whole arc was weird. It's.
So is this,
like,
do you think this is the conclusion of this arc? Because next week we have an episode titled Deception coming up. So,
oh yeah, I think this is done. Like, unless Lux is showing back up, like, I don't know where this is going.
Yeah, I don't either, but we've got Deception and then another Friends episode the week after that. So I have no idea. I can't remember the timeline at this point of what happens next. I honestly don't remember either. All I know, and I have no memory of what happens to Lux. I don't remember Lux
at all from the first set of viewings. I'm not gonna lie. If I didn't mention it, I kind of forgot Lux existed when he showed back up in this episode. It took me just a little bit.
He was named. I will put it that way.
Yeah, I was happy he was named because I was like, that sounds familiar. Here's my only hope, and it should be obvious, but I really hope Lux dies by the end of the series.
Ouch.
Oh well, man, I hope he does, and I I hope we get like a weird like Gravity with Sandra Bullock sort of episode where we find out he's just trapped in that escape pod because he's stupid and didn't pack any food or anything.
Yeah, I am interested to see what becomes of him, because as with his plan at the beginning of the episode, his plan at the end of the episode was not that great. But to find out what happens to him, we will just have to tune in the future weeks and until he comes across the radar again. In the meantime, do you want to wrap this one up and maybe tell people where they can
if anybody
find
wants
us
to reach out to us, for sure, notthenerds.com. We always like to do shout outs for Lindsay at Strange Fantasy Music on Twitter. strangefantasymusic@gmail.com, and then Kevin at They Call Me K-Dub on Twitter. They did our music jingles and the main graphic art respectively for us. And then your buddy, sorry, I still haven't gotten this one down. Blue the Beard.
Blue the Beard on Twitter.
On Twitter. He's the fellow that put together our website. So again, that's notthenerds.com. All the episodes are listed there via the YouTube feed. But wherever you're listening to us, please give us a like, subscribe, rate us as well, please. But until next week, where we'll be discussing Deception, I have been Lorenzo Fon.
I have been Kevin.
These aren't the nerds you're looking for.
Bye-bye.